I would like to invite all of my listeners, supporters, friends, and guests to join me for the Empowerment Zone Live on September 30th, 2021 at 6 p.m. EST. Please visit ramonahouston.com/podcast for more details.
Welcome to the Empowerment Zone with Ramona Houston, where we zone in on Black and Brown relations and our journey to empowering our communities.
Political empowerment is an important aspect of power, and political empowerment is about being engaged. That means registering to vote, educating yourself on the issues and about the candidates, and casting your vote. But beyond just voting, political empowerment requires that individuals and communities continue to be educated on and engaged in the issues. The statistics, however, show a different picture when it comes to political engagement. According to the Pew Research Center, only about 80% of eligible voters actually registered to vote. And according to the 2020 elections, only 60 to 65% of registered voters actually voted. But beyond these statistics, we know that few people remain politically engaged beyond elections. It is Hispanic Heritage Month, and today at the Empowerment Zone, we're going to talk to America Garcia Grewal. America is going to talk to us about the importance of being politically engaged and involved over the long term. Originally from Eagle Pass, Texas, America is putting out fires in rocky Fiji, and when brush fires aren't threatening the bee farm she lives on, America is the Asia Pacific Deputy Regional Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad, the official arm of the Democratic Party for millions of U.S. citizens that live, work, and vote from abroad. Welcome, America, to the Empowerment Zone. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Yes, I have 7 dogs here on the farm and 16 chickens and 2 horses. And so I try to mute it so you don't hear all of the clucking and the barking and the growling and everything else here.
No problem. So I apologize. Could you please tell me how to pronounce your last name?
Last name is Grewal. So
Grewal. Okay, thank you.
I met a charming Indian gentleman when I was at Texas A&M University, and he thought I was pretty awesome too. And we've been married for 26 years now. So you have the Latina last name Garcia, and then you have the Sikh
Grewal.
last name of Grewal. Yes.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on that 26-year marriage. So I've been wanting to get you on for a long time, as you know. So I'm so glad we finally figured out our schedules, with me being on the East Coast in the U.S. and you being out on the Pacific coast with in Fiji. And so I'm glad we have the opportunity to finally have you on the Empowerment Zone. I'm so proud of you, America. Who would have thought that you would be a regional vice chair of Democrats Abroad, and when you look at the Asian Pacific area. And so you are really passionate about political empowerment. And we here at the Empowerment Zone look at all aspects of empowerment: political, educational, financial, personal. And so I can't wait to have this conversation with you about political empowerment, and particularly looking at the situation with U.S. citizens who live abroad. So before we get into our discussion, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about you and your background personally and professionally.
Great. Well, originally from Eagle Pass, Texas, on the U.S.-Mexico border. I grew up with Ramona and her whole family coming to visit us. They would camp out in the backyard with a Girl Scout troop. We would have campfires and just do all kinds of really cool stuff. And then we would basically take a field trip into our sister city of Piedras Negras and go to the mercado there and it was a really wonderful period growing up and everything. Random fun fact, my date to prom was her cousin. And we're still in touch this day, even though we've both gone very separate ways. But I had a very diverse upbringing. And also, one of the things that growing up on the US-Mexico border was realizing that things that happen there are not the same as they are everywhere else. You know, you could cross the border, you could see the language was different. You could go up into San Antonio, or you could go outside of state and you could see things were completely different. So the idea that the world is a fixed place and will always be a certain way, we'll always say, you know, things in a certain language and stuff, never implanted in my mind. It was always like, you know, we can change things, you know, either by moving ourselves or by moving the things around us. And I never really got involved in, you know, like great big P politics. Whenever something happened that concerned me, like funding for schools, then I would get involved with individual causes and, you know, look to my left, look to my right and find out, hey, you're interested, go with me and let's talk to, you know, fill in the blank, the principal, the school board, the city, you know, about the things that are happening. I learned about partnering with larger organizations, CSOs, as well as institutions, things like hospitals, when I started working on pedestrian safety. I don't own a car. I haven't driven daily. My goodness. It was probably 2010 where I last drove on a daily basis. You know, when I was in, I went to Texas A&M for university and my graduate degree, I actually bicycled to work. I bicycled until I was 8 months pregnant. And my doctor said, I can't, oh yeah. My doctor said, like, I know you're healthy, you're doing great. He's like, but I just can't have you on the bicycle anymore. And I was like, well, darn. So, yeah. You know, bicycles are one of those kind of like in between spot. You're not a pedestrian, you're not a vehicle. And so advocating for my rights as a cyclist, and then when I had to walk everywhere, as a pedestrian, when my son was walking to school, put me in contact with hospitals and with people who were interested in, you know, greater safety. And so I learned a lot about organizing, reaching out to folks, making a difference. You know, one of the problems about being an activist is that sometimes we jump from cause to cause, and I don't want to do that. I really do not want to be a gray-haired granny holding up a sign that I, you know, did 20 years ago saying, I can't believe I'm still protesting this shit. I want these problems to go away. I want them to be done, dusted, and gone. And, you know, when you live outside the United States, you see that things like universal health care are done. Like they are happening all the way around the world. Free education, you know, you can go to university for free in so many places around the world. Maternity leave, just taking time off. When I look at how many hours I worked early in my career, it's just mind boggling. You know, we talked about when I was pregnant, I worked full time and worked on my master's degree at the same time. Hardly took any time off at all. And when my son was small, I actually had a full-time job, and then I taught 2 university courses in the evening. So, and I didn't feel like that was unusual. You know, it wasn't until I moved to New York State and my vacation time expired that I actually started taking my time, because, you know, I didn't want anything to go to waste. And the idea that I couldn't cash out my vacation time is like, no, wait, that's my time. I'm taking it with me. And then you talk to folks who live in Germany, you talk to folks who live in other parts of the world, and they're like, well, we get 6 weeks vacation at a time, you know, and they take off the entire chunk at a time. And it just really rewires your brain. So that's kind of where I started out. I started out being very cause focused, and, you know, I had a pretty straightforward route. You contact your elected officials and you say, this is what we want. You show them the data, and, you know, things change. When I moved to Fiji in 2014, my husband accepted a position at the University of South Pacific here in Fiji. When I moved to Fiji in 2014, I wasn't able to go to the state capitol. I wasn't able to meet with my elected officials. And I got in the habit of, you know, here's an issue that's of concern to me. I would walk my son out to his bus in the morning, and then I'd come back in and I'd make my phone calls. So 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock afternoon in Washington, D.C., and I'd make my phone calls. And I was okay 2014 to 2016. 2016 to 2018, I didn't just call Congress. I contacted the Board of Education. I contacted, I contacted every single person I possibly thought could look at what was going on and put a stop to it. And it simply was not effective. And in 2018, after my congressman was elected again, I remember heading back in from the bus, and that was my phone call time. That was my letter writing time. That was when I did something. And I was just like, I don't want to do it. If the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, then I'm going insane. I refuse to accept that. Things have got to change. And one of the things that's been amazing for me is my network, folks like you, Ramona. And I had met a woman in New Zealand who mentioned this group called Democrats Abroad. And, I was like, wait, tell me more. Okay. And I really want to emphasize that up until 2018, I tended to vote more heavily Democratic, but I really was much more cause focused. I was much more issue focused. And I was that person who walked into the voting booth with a list of all the candidates and, a short bio about them and why I was voting for these different folks and everything. Not just like, a pre-filled ballot, but right. I had my guide. In 2018, we started talking about what our options were. I learned about Democrats Abroad. Fiji is a tiny country. We have less than 1 million people here and even fewer American citizens here. At the time, they said there were 26 US citizens registered with the Democratic Party in Fiji. And there's you can't have a country committee. You can't do your own, it's called a global primary. You can't do your primary, but we've got an idea where to put you. They plugged me into the regional team. And so since 2018, I've been getting on Zoom and doing all kinds of phone calls and everything with Democrats Abroad. And it's been wonderful. Just knowing that I'm not alone, that I can live outside of the United States and be passionate about what's happening in the US. Yes. And kind of continue to have, part of my heart living and beating in Texas while I'm here in Fiji has been amazing. Talking to folks who are living in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, as well as the Americas, South and Central America and Canada, has been amazing. And hearing about, how they deal with the political situation there. For example, in some countries, Democrats Abroad, the organization, does not email any of the registered members. They have no communication with them except basically word, like it's old-fashioned phone tree. It's like, let me call you, Ramona, on the phone, and you and I will share a conversation about things you need to know. Simply because the political environment in those countries is really challenging. Organizations like the LGBT caucus, they're not able to operate as openly in certain countries in the Middle East because, to do so could lead to jail time. It could lead to penalties. It could lead to people being expelled from the country for what they do. We talk a lot about Black Lives Matter, and one of the Democrats Abroad events that happened in Asia Pacific had a Black Lives Matter banner present at their voter registration event. They were not like right next to each other, but they were in the same physical space. And the police in that country entered the event, closed the premises, shut everything down, and confiscated the materials. Yes, and you compare that to other countries where, for example, in Chile, the voter registration drive was actually held in a government building that had been funded by the US government years ago. And so you've got, incredibly supportive countries on one hand supporting the democratic process. And on the other hand, it's almost a secret, that you're a citizen and you're actively engaging in democracy. So It's quite a mix. The U.S. State Department has estimated there are 9 million U.S. citizens living outside of the United States. It's hard to tell, though, because it's counted in so many different ways. There are some things, for example, the Mexico census of 2020 showed that in Mexico, there are 1.5 million people who were born in the United States living in Mexico. Now, just because you were born in the States doesn't mean that you're a U.S. citizen, but you can probably guess that a lot of those 1.5 million people are U.S. citizens.
Correct.
And those over 18, we estimate about 2/3 of those would be eligible to vote as well. So we're working off of a best guesstimate of about 6 million US citizens around the world who are eligible to vote. But voting itself is a challenge. So for example, I'm a Texas voter. Texas voters have to physically return our ballots. And I mean, yeah. I have friends that live in the States that will make a big deal about sending me their Christmas cards, and they'll post it on social media. I'm sending my postcard. I'm taking bets, Christmas card. I'm taking bets on when it's going to get to you. And the winner or loser, I'm not sure which, is I have one friend who sent her Christmas cards the Monday after Thanksgiving, and they arrived in Fiji September of the following year.
Oh, so, wow. Wow.
Yeah. And it came with a stamp that said "missent to Bermuda." I actually posted it on my Instagram. I'll have to send you a link. So, but I routinely get mail from the States in June, July, my Christmas card specifically, because we track this. We know when it was sent and when it got here. My Christmas cards generally come in February or March, which is really challenging if I'm trying to vote on a physical ballot. So the good news is that Texas will send me an email ballot, which I can then print out and send back. The rules for sending back your ballot are so complicated. Some states, for example, Pennsylvania, they actually had an arts and craft video with glue and scissors showing people how to have a guard and how to print your paper out and then create a guard envelope to protect your ballot, and then have your wrap envelope that had to be, and there's signatures on here and everything else to send back the ballot. Okay, so we figured out how to vote. We got ourselves registered. We got it done in time. We got our ballot. We got a printer. I don't know about you, but it's pretty hard to find printer ink some days, but okay, we managed that. We got it printed out. Now we want to go mail back the ballot. Well, in 2019, Fiji's response to COVID, in 2020, Fiji's response to COVID-19 was to completely ground all flights. There were no flights coming in or out of the country. And that included cargo, there was nothing. If you received anything that came in on a plane, this is DHL, this is FedEx, this is medical, things like contact lenses and some medications, there were no flights flying. They simply were not flying. Of course, as the science progressed, we realized, how the disease was transmitted and stuff, the flights did resume, but still things were very heavily delayed. Texas requires the return of a physical ballot. I had no way to vote in the first primary. It was really challenging. We obviously, I never received the ballot from my local election office, but we had a primary in Texas, we had a runoff primary in Texas, and then we had the presidential election. Right. I submitted something called the federal write-in absentee ballot because I didn't have my stuff come in. And I sent ballots back through the US Embassy, and I sent them back through the Fiji Postal Service. Sending stuff back through the US Embassy requires that it go to Washington, DC, and then it gets mailed. So it's not, it's not like going to the post office and expecting it to be there within a week. They still estimate that it's 3 weeks for the mail to get back. So of my federal write-in absentee ballots, my primary ballots, and my primary runoff ballots, I submitted a total of 4 ballots. Only 2 of them made it to the election office, and only 1 of them, thank God, it was my actual presidential election ballot. Only 1 ballot made it to my election office in time to be counted.
So looking at this, this is very challenging, when you look at not just the issue in Fiji, but that there are so many countries throughout the world that I'm sure that there are individual challenges with each individual country. And it is a big hurdle with trying to vote. So when you look at people who live abroad, and particularly Democrats who live abroad, what is your call to action to try to help them to be able to exercise their voting rights when they live abroad?
Yeah, well, I believe that your stat said the majority of your listeners are in the United States. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now, and Ramona, I'm going to ask you to do this too. I know you turned your phone off, but I want you to physically get your phone, and I want you to go look at your contacts. And I want you just to do a real quick scroll through your contacts and say, who do I know that is in the military or maybe has a job working outside of the United States? You know people, you've heard about them. They're like, oh yeah, I've been posted in London. I've been here. I'm doing study abroad. Or maybe they talk about their son, or they talk about a relative who's, for whatever reason, living outside the United States. What I want you to do is look at your contact list right now and try and find 3 people that are living and working outside the United States and tell them, do you know about votefromabroad.org? Did you know that you can request your ballot through votefromabroad.org? That's my call to action for your listeners right now.
That is a great idea. So all of my listeners of the Empowerment Zone, we really need to get all people engaged who are living abroad, who are U.S. citizens, engaged in the political process. There's always an election, whether it's local, whether it's state or federal. There are always elections going on, and we need to make sure that we maximize the vote of everyone. So find 3 people in your contact list and let them know about votefromabroad.org. Votefromabroad.org. Well, I am really proud of you, America. And, I loved the times that my family spent with your family growing up. I learned so much from going to the Valley and spending a lot of time, even beyond when we were Girl Scouts. Our family would just go and visit you. Sometimes we bring the Girl Scout troop with us. Sometimes it was just the immediate family. But to see your growth in terms of your political engagement and really being a leader internationally is really a testimony to your family and the fact that Texans rule. But anyway, so tell us a little bit before you go. Can you tell us a little bit about Democrats Abroad and the work that you do and what your purpose is, and what do people need to do if they want to be involved with Democrats Abroad?
Well, the first thing to do is request your ballot, and votefromabroad.org is not political, even though it's completely funded by democratsabroad.org. It is a voter registration arm, and it doesn't matter how you vote, who you want to vote for. Votefromabroad.org is completely neutral. At the end of it, when you indicate your party affiliation, if you indicated Democrat, you will be asked, do you want to join Democrats Abroad? And there is a very long history of American Democrats living and working abroad. So the first famous Democrat, Thomas Jefferson, drafted the Bill of Rights while he was living in Paris, France. So it goes back to the very founding of the United States. Democrats Abroad, so Democrats living overseas began organizing in the 1960s, and it became an entity, a separate entity during the 1960 presidential campaign. So it's been around for quite a while. Democrats Abroad is recognized as a state, similar to Texas, New Jersey, New York, as a state party by the Democratic National Committee. I mentioned that 9 million U.S. citizens. If we were a state, we'd be the size of New Jersey. but we're not. I can't physically walk into an apartment building and walk out with, a bag full of voter registrations. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes money to try and find the US citizens living outside. And that's one of the reasons why, if you know about this living in the States and you can tell somebody who's living in Germany or living in Europe or living anywhere, that they can vote, it helps so very much. The Democrats Abroad has been a leader with a number of progressive issues. And so, for example, they've had some different campaigns. Same-sex marriage was one of the ones that first appeared on the platform of Democrats Abroad. And to this day, 2021, we still have love exiles, people who are not able to return to the United States because their partner is not able to come back with them, isn't able to enjoy the same rights and protections that they can enjoy in the country that they live in. We also have healthcare exiles. There's a woman that I know here in Fiji who said this is her first job living and working outside the United States. And she said that the cost of her medication, she has a chronic disease, the cost of her medication out of pocket in Fiji was less than her copay in the United States. And she is in the States, she lived in fear that if she wasn't doing a good job, she would lose her job. And without her job, she couldn't afford healthcare. In the States, there was always that worry that, just one bad boss, one bad encounter, one something would be the end of everything. But 1 month of her costs for healthcare in the United States would have funded her for a year here in Fiji. And so for the first time in her life, she's able to relax and kind of look around and not stress about every single little thing that's happening because the cost of her healthcare has dropped down so much. So there are, oh gosh, every issue that's an issue in the United States is something that we are talking about and we're, looking at as part of Democrats Abroad. And, for example, immigration, going back to our LGBT caucus, one of the issues that gets faced is adoption. If a same-sex couple wants to adopt a child and bring it into the United States, they are facing different hurdles than a couple of two different genders that marry and adopt. But some of the issues that they face are the same ones that are faced by our immigrant communities living in the United States. And so there's a lot of synergies, there's a lot of ways that we can work together and we can do things. It's a community of like-minded people, however, we don't always agree. And one of the things that I love the most is that it's a big tent and all the ideas, every person is welcome, and the democratic process triumphs. We're able to take input from a lot of different directions and look at it, examine it critically, and then say, okay, this is best for our entire group, and we're going to move forward with this. And it's pretty awesome to see democratic principles at work. It's pretty wonderful to be accepted, as we are, where we are. And to be able to advance the issues that we care about so much.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that information with us about Democrats Abroad, the importance, most importantly, the fact that U.S. citizens abroad do have the opportunity to be engaged, but many times they don't know. So we have to inform our communities that they must be engaged. Even if they live outside of the United States, they still have the right to participate in the political process in the United States. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, America, how would they reach you?
Okay. Our website's very simple. It's democratsabroad.org. democratsabroad.org. And if you go on there and you click on countries, you'll see Asia Pacific. I'm the vice chair, the
regions.
Yes. And I can be reached through the link right there on the democratsabroad.org website. I'm on Twitter, America G, Amerika, the letter G, America G. And I'm also on Instagram. So I'm would love to talk to everybody and see everyone. Ramona, you'll enjoy this. I have pictures of life in Fiji, and it's not beaches and not beaches and palm trees. Last night it was a knot of toads, which is what you call a whole heap of toads. They were gathered under the water faucet.
Oh,
and I
man.
think you also get to see my dead washing machine. You get to see, real life in the Pacific.
I've got to check out that post. So make sure you check out democratsabroad.org. And as many of you know, Fiji is not a country. She was saying go to Asia Pacific region, and you can find her there. And you can also check Medica out on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. And so I look forward to checking out those posts. And thank you so much, Medica, for all of the wonderful work you do. Thank you for your love. It's just wonderful to be a part of your extended family. I would like to invite all of my listeners, supporters, friends, and guests to join me for the Empowerment Zone Live on September 30th, 2021 at 6 p.m. EST. Please visit RamonaHouston.com/podcast for more details. So, America, we are at our college strategies portion of our interview, and we want to know what college or colleges did you attend? What were your majors and your degrees? And then what is that strategy you would give students to advise them on how to be successful in college?
Okay, good question. So I attended Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. I have an undergraduate degree in speech communication with a minor in German, and I have a master's degree in management information systems, which I did that working full time. If you have the opportunity to study full time, I strongly recommend it. It is hard. It is very hard to work full time and go to school. What I would recommend to you is pick up those flyers, pick up the information about the different resources that are available to you, and take advantage of them. The office hours, everything else. It is not a bother. You walk into a campus advising office, the career office, the counseling center, even if you walk into the gym, there is somebody who is tallying the number of people that walk through the door. They get their funding based on you walking in that door. I worked in our career center, I worked in our advising center, and we paid thousands of dollars for some of the different software and some of the different programs that we had access to. And if people didn't use them, we would give up those subscriptions. And so, it's a free service. It is something that you will pay hundreds of dollars for on your own. And when you're a university student, it's being paid for by student fees. But more than just the subscriptions, more than just the access, the services and everything else, meet the people. If your professor lists office hours, go visit them during office hours before every single test. Go in at the beginning, hi, my name's America. I'm a student in your 101 class. And then before every test, you go and you say, hi, here's my study guide. This is what I've done. Is this what I need to be focusing on? If you walk in there and say, what's on the test? They'll be just like, oh, look at your notes. But if you walk in there with a study guide that you have already put some time and effort in preparing, they're more likely to say, oh, you're focusing too much on this. You need to look more at the theory, or you need to focus more on these different things. So they won't tell you what's on the test, but they'll focus you more on what you need to be ready for the test. The other thing is, down the road, when you need that letter of recommendation, you're not, and oh, God bless them. I had plenty of students that would show up at the last minute and say like, hi, I need this tomorrow. It's really hard to pull together the information and write a really solid letter of recommendation based on a very short notice. But if you've been coming to see me since the beginning of the term, and if you've been checking in with me before every single test, then that letter of recommendation isn't a challenge to write. It is a joy to write. So take advantage of those resources, visit during office hours, make connections, and then after you graduate, stay in touch. Your faculty members and the staff that work at your university know some pretty amazing people. They know you. Mm-hmm. They know some pretty amazing people, and they've got a fantastic referral circle that they will open up to you. You need to be there.
Great advice, America. So you all take advantage of all the types of assistance available to you on the college campus. I know I'm from a small, historically Black college and university where I attended for undergrad, and I went to a large public state institution in Texas for graduate school, and it was amazing the amount and the type of resources at a large public institution. But what I want to say is the fact that they had a reading class, a speed reading class, which, in graduate school, you have to read 3 books a week per in terms of your classes. And those speed reading classes really became helpful for me. And beyond just speed reading, there are all types of resources available to you. Like she said, the gymnasium, tutorials, all these type of resources. So make sure you identify what the resources are and take advantage of them. And then lastly, get to know your professors. Your professors are there to assist you through your educational career, but they also can be so helpful beyond your academic matriculation. They can help you professionally by providing those letters of recommendation as well as that support beyond graduation. So thank you so much for that wonderful advice, America. It was great having you.
A special thank you to the incredible team of the Empowerment Zone. Terry Gully, theme song, NADWorks, digital support, and of course, our featured guest.
If you enjoyed my podcast, please subscribe. We are on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to rate us on Apple Podcasts too. Thank you for your continued support.